The sound of Maya's voice drifting from the kitchen at 2 a.m. wasn't unusual anymore. What caught my attention wasn't the late hour, it was the tone. Cold, calculated, like she was negotiating a business deal instead of having a conversation with her husband's life hanging in the balance. My life, my rules. He'll just have to accept it? I paused at the top of the stairs, my laptop repair tools still in hand. That's what you want to hear at 2 a.m. Your wife plotting like she owns Netflix and you're just some canceled show she's tired of renewing. I'm Jack Morrison, and 6 months ago, I thought I had it figured out. Decent IT job, nice house in this slowly decaying New England city that pretends it's still relevant, and a wife who seemed to love me despite my blue-collar roots and her fancy advertising career. Turns out, I was about as wrong as a weather forecast in tornado season. The whole mess started with Maya's brilliant idea to become a surrogate. Not for us. We talked about kids, sure, but Maya's biological clock was apparently set to someone else's time zone. She wanted to carry a baby for the Hendersons, this wealthy couple from the ritzy part of town who couldn't conceive naturally. It's good money, Jack, she'd said, waving the contract like it was a winning lottery ticket. $50,000 for 9 months of work. Think about what we could do with that. What I thought about was my wife's body changing for strangers, the emotional roller coaster, the complications that could arise. What I said was, shouldn't we discuss this together? You know, like married people do? Maya's laugh had all the warmth of a January morning. You don't get a say in my body, Jack. This is happening. Guess I missed the class where they explained that marriage was a solo sport. The Hendersons backed out 2 months in. Cold feet, they said. Maya was left holding the bag, literally. Stressed, hormonal, and somehow convinced it was all my fault for not being supportive enough. My friend Big Mike, who runs the boxing gym where I try to pretend I'm still in fighting shape, had warned me. You let her walk over you like that, Jack. You'll end up sleeping on my gym floor. Mike's got this way of cutting through the noise. 20 years of training fighters teaches you to spot weakness, and apparently, I was broadcasting mine in high definition. But it was 3 weeks ago when everything really went sideways. Maya had left her phone on the kitchen counter, unprecedented, since that thing was usually attached to her hand like a digital appendage. The screen lit up with a text notification, and I glanced over without thinking. The message was from Jared, her coworker at the ad agency. Young, flashy, drives a BMW that costs more than I make in a year, and has the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about rent money. Can't wait for tonight. Rooftop, 11 p.m. I'll bring the good stuff. My hands started shaking, not with sadness, but with something darker. A cold, calculating anger that felt foreign and familiar at the same time. I scrolled up through their conversation, each message like a punch to the gut. Explicit photos, plans for hotel meetings, jokes about her boring husband who was too stupid to notice. The last message sent a chill through me. Tonight? On the roof. Bring the pills. I set the phone down carefully, my IT technician brain already working through the implications. Maya wasn't just cheating, she was planning something bigger. And Jared, with his pharmaceutical connections through his rich family, was supplying whatever chemical courage they needed. That's when I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt like waking up from a long, stupid dream. I wasn't the victim in this story anymore. I was about to become something much more dangerous. The villain. Maya's behavior over the next week confirmed what I already knew, but hadn't wanted to face. Late nights became later. Client meetings multiplied like rabbits. Her phone was now password protected, and she carried it everywhere, even to the bathroom. The kicker came at her parents' monthly dinner. Maya's folks, the Ashfords, live in one of those colonial houses that screams, "We're better than you," from the circular driveway to the imported Italian tiles. They've never quite forgiven their daughter for marrying beneath her station, a blue-collar IT guy instead of a lawyer or doctor. We were halfway through Mrs. Ashford's famous salmon when the doorbell rang. "Oh, that's probably Jared," Maya said, jumping up with the kind of enthusiasm she hadn't shown me in months. He was in the neighborhood and thought he'd stop by. Jared walked in like he owned the place, all designer jeans and perfect teeth. He brought flowers for Mrs. Ashford and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The kind of guy who makes dropping by seem like a carefully orchestrated performance. Jack, right? He extended his hand with that practiced smile. Maya talks about you all the time. I bet she does, I thought, shaking his hand just hard enough to make him wince slightly. Jared, Maya mentions you too. Quite a bit, actually. The color drained from Maya's face, but she recovered quickly. Jared's working on our biggest campaign. The Henderson account, actually. The Henderson account. The same Hendersons who'd backed out of the surrogacy deal. What were the odds? During dinner, I watched them. The way Maya laughed too loudly at Jared's jokes. How he found excuses to touch her arm. the meaningful glances they thought they were hiding. I'd have to be blind, deaf, and lobotomized not to see what was happening. After dinner, I followed Maya to the kitchen under the pretense of helping with dishes. "Interesting coincidence," I said, loading plates into the dishwasher. "Jared working on the Henderson account." Maya's hand stilled on the wine glass she was drying. "It's not a coincidence, Jack. It's business. Something you might understand if you ever tried to advance your career instead of hiding behind computer screens." The words hit their mark, but instead of the usual sting, I felt that cold anger again. "You're right. I should be more ambitious. Maybe it's time I started taking what I want instead of asking permission." Maya looked at me sharply, but before she could respond, Jared appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, that perfect smile faltering slightly. "Perfect," I said, meeting his eyes. "Just having a conversation about taking what you want." The next night, I followed them. Maya had claimed another client meeting, but her car was parked at the agency building. I waited across the street in the shadows of a construction site, feeling like a character in one of those noir movies where the husband is always the last to know. At 10:45, they emerged from the building and headed to the rooftop parking garage. I gave them a few minutes, then took the stairs. The rooftop was dimly lit, perfect for clandestine meetings. I found them near the edge. Maya pressed against the concrete barrier while Jared fumbled with a small bottle of blue pills. Viagra, from the look of them. Maya was laughing, that genuine laugh I hadn't heard in months. "You're ridiculous," she said, but her hands were already working on his belt. I stepped out of the shadows. "Am I interrupting something?" Maya spun around, her face cycling through surprise, guilt, and finally settling on defiance. Jared dropped the pill bottle, little blue tablets scattering across the concrete like confetti at the world's most pathetic party. "Jack," Maya started, but I held up a hand. "Save it." I walked closer, my footsteps echoing in the night air. I already know about the affair. The question is, what else don't I know? Jared had gone pale, but he tried to salvage some dignity. "Look, man, this isn't what it looks like." I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Really?" "Because it looks like my wife's boyfriend needs chemical assistance to perform. That's exactly what it looks like." I bent down and picked up the pill bottle, reading the prescription label. Jared Whitman, erectile dysfunction. I looked up at him with mock sympathy. "That's got to be embarrassing." "What are you, 28? "You don't understand," Maya said, stepping between us. "This is complicated." "No, it's really not." I pocketed the pill bottle. "But it's about to be." I turned to Jared, who was backing toward the stairwell. "Next time I see you, you'll need more than these little helpers." He practically ran for the exit. Maya started after him, then turned back to me, her face twisted with fury. "You have no right." "I have every right. I'm your husband, remember? That thing you promised in front of God and everyone?" That was before I realized what a small, petty man you really are. The words should have hurt. Instead, they felt liberating. "You're right. I am small and petty, but I'm also very good with technology, and I have a lot of free time now that I know where my wife spends her evenings." Maya's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, and even I could feel how cold it was. It means you're about to find out what happens when the boring husband stops being boring." The next morning, Maya was gone before I woke up. No note, no text, just the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and the absence that felt like a declaration of war. I called in sick to work, first time in 3 years, and drove to Big Mike's gym. I needed to hit something, and Mike's heavy bags were more legally acceptable than my preferred targets. Mike took one look at me and tossed me a pair of gloves. "You look like hell, Jack. What's eating you?" I told him everything while I pounded the bag. The affair, the pills, the rooftop confrontation. Mike listened without judgment, occasionally adjusting my form or telling me to put more hip into my punches. "So what's your play?" he asked when I finally stopped, sweat dripping onto the gym floor. "I'm going to destroy them." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Destroy them how?" "You can't just go around beating people up. This isn't the movies." "I don't need to beat anyone up. I'm an IT specialist, Mike. I know things about digital footprints that would make you nervous about your browser history." That afternoon, I started my research. Maya's laptop, which she'd left at home in her rush to avoid me, was a treasure trove of information. Her email, her social media accounts, her cloud storage, all of it protected by passwords that I cracked in less than 20 minutes. The affair had been going on for 4 months, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was discovering that Maya and her best friend Simone had been planning something much bigger than just cheating. Simone worked at the same ad agency, a sharp-tongued woman with expensive tastes and flexible ethics. According to their email chain, she'd been helping Maya forge documents related to the surrogacy arrangement. Even after the Hendersons backed out, they were still trying to collect money from them, claiming emotional distress, medical expenses, lost wages. It was fraud, plain and simple, and they'd planned to pin it on me if things went south, painting me as the controlling husband who'd forced Maya into the arrangement. I printed everything: emails, text screenshots, bank records showing payments to a document forger. Then I started phase 2 of my plan. That evening, I went to Flanagan's, the dive bar where half the city's blue-collar workers drown their sorrows. It's also where information flows like cheap beer. Everyone knows everyone else's business, and gossip spreads faster than a grease fire. I bought a round for the house and started talking. Nothing too obvious, just casual mentions of seeing Maya and Jared together at odd hours. Questions about whether anyone else had noticed them acting suspicious at company events. By closing time, the seeds were planted. In a city this size, rumors have a half-life of about 6 hours before they reach critical mass. The next day, I put my IT skills to more creative use. I'd installed a small camera in Maya's office during a late-night visit to the agency building. Security there was a joke, and I'd done their network setup 2 years ago. I still had admin access to everything. The camera caught Maya and Jared in compromising positions, but more importantly, it caught their conversations about the Henderson fraud. Simone appeared in several videos, discussing how to maximize their payout and keep Jack in the dark until it's too late. But I wanted more than just evidence. I wanted public humiliation. Friday night, I followed Jared to his usual hangout, an upscale sports bar where he liked to flash his money and hit on college girls. I waited in the parking lot until he came out, drunk and alone. "Hey, Jared." I stepped out from behind his BMW. "We need to talk." He squinted at me in the dim light. "Jack? What are you doing here?" "Thought we could have a friendly conversation, man to man." "Look, about Maya. This isn't about Maya. This is about respect." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken from the security camera footage. Him and Maya in her office, her skirt hiked up, his pants around his ankles. "Nice composition," I said. "Very artistic. I'm thinking of submitting it to the agency's newsletter." Jared's face went white. "You can't do that." "Why not? You didn't seem concerned about privacy when you were screwing my wife on company time." He lunged at me, but 3 months of boxing training had improved my reflexes. I sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and used his momentum to slam him against his car. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "You're going to stay away from Maya. You're going to find a new job. And you're going to pray I don't decide to get creative with these photos." "You're crazy," he gasped. "No, I'm motivated." There's a difference. I let him go and stepped back. "Oh, and Jared? You might want to get your car detailed. Something smells off." I walked away, leaving him to discover the fish sauce I'd poured into his air vents earlier that evening. By Monday morning, his BMW would smell like a dumpster behind a seafood restaurant. "Now your car smells as bad as your morals," I thought with satisfaction. But I was just getting started. Maya came home Sunday night, her face a mask of cold fury. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows and stalked into the living room where I was watching the game. "What did you do to Jared?" I muted the TV and looked up at her with innocent eyes. "Hello to you too, honey. How was your weekend?" "Don't play games with me, Jack. Jared's car reeks, he's got bruises on his arm, and he's talking about transferring to the Seattle office. Sounds like he's had a rough few days. Maybe he should be more careful about the company he keeps." Maya's hands clenched into fists. "You threatened him." "I had a conversation with him. About boundaries. About respect. About what happens when people think they can take whatever they want without consequences." "You have no right." "I have every right." I stood up, my voice rising for the first time. "You're my wife. This is my house. These are my friends and neighbors you're humiliating me in front of." "Your friends?" Maya laughed bitterly. "What friends, Jack? You mean Mike at that pathetic gym? The losers at Flanagan's who think you're some kind of hero for fixing their computers?" The words stung because they carried a grain of truth. I'd never been the social butterfly Maya was. My circle was small, mostly work acquaintances and gym buddies, but they were real, and they mattered to me. "At least my friends don't help me commit fraud," I said quietly. Maya went very still. "What did you say?" I pulled out a folder of printed emails and documents. The Henderson scam, the forged medical records, the plan to blame me if you got caught. Should I keep going? Maya sank onto the couch, her face pale. "You went through my computer." "Your computer, our house, our marriage. Funny how you only remember the our part when you're caught. You don't understand." The Hendersons owed me. They put me through hell for 2 months, then just walked away. I had medical bills, lost work time. You had bills that insurance covered and a job that paid you while you were out. What you wanted was easy money, and you thought I was too stupid to figure it out. Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, smaller, more vulnerable. What do you want, Jack? I want my wife back. The woman I married, not this stranger who lies and cheats and schemes. That woman never existed, Maya said softly. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not for years, playing the role of the grateful wife who married up, who should be happy with her simple life and simple husband. The honesty was brutal, but it was also liberating. Then we're done pretending. Maya looked up at me, tears in her eyes. What happens now? Now you find out what happens when the simple husband stops being simple. The next morning, I called in another sick day and drove to the hospital where Maya had been getting her surrogacy-related medical care. I'd made an appointment with Dr. Patricia Wells, the physician who'd been overseeing the process. Mr. Morrison, Dr. Wells said, settling behind her desk, I was sorry to hear about the Hendersons backing out. How is Maya handling everything? That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I think there might be some irregularities in her medical records. I showed her copies of the documents Simone had forged, medical clearances that had never been issued, test results that had been altered, insurance claims for procedures that never happened. Dr. Wells examined the papers with growing alarm. These aren't from our office. The letterhead is wrong, the signature is forged, and we never performed half of these tests. I was afraid of that. What should I do? You need to report this to the medical board and probably the police. This is serious fraud, Mr. Morrison. I nodded gravely, but inside I was smiling. I'll need official documentation that these records are fake, for the investigation. An hour later, I left the hospital with a folder full of legitimate medical records and a letter from Dr. Wells stating that the forged documents were not from her practice. It was everything I needed for the final phase of my plan. That afternoon, I got a call from Big Mike. Jack, you need to get down here, now. I found him in his office, looking grim. Sitting across from his desk were Tom Bradley and Steve Kowalski, 2 guys I'd considered friends. We'd worked together on a few IT projects, grabbed beers after work, complained about our wives and our jobs. What's going on? I asked. Tom looked uncomfortable. Jack, we need to talk. About Maya. What about her? Steve leaned forward. Look, man, we've been hearing things. About you threatening people, following Maya around, going through her personal stuff. And that's not okay, Tom said. That's stalker behavior, abusive husband stuff. I felt that cold anger rising again. Who told you that? Does it matter? Steve stood up. The point is, you need to get help. Professional help. Before this gets worse. Before what gets worse? Before you do something you can't take back, Tom said. We're worried about you, Jack. This isn't who you are. I looked at these men I'd called friends, seeing them clearly for the first time. They'd heard one side of the story, Maya's side, filtered through Simone and the social media whisper network, and they'd already made their judgment. You're right, I said quietly. This isn't who I was, but it's exactly who I'm becoming. I turned and walked out, leaving them staring after me. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a long moment, feeling the last of my old life fall away. My wife had betrayed me. My friends had abandoned me. Everyone I'd trusted had chosen sides, and it wasn't mine. Fine. If they wanted a villain, I'd give them one they'd never forget. That evening, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to a local gossip blogger who specialized in exposing cheating spouses and corporate fraud. The second was to the Hendersons' attorney. The third was to Maya. We need to meet, I told her. All of us. You, me, Jared, and Simone. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Jack, I don't think that's a good idea. It wasn't a request, Maya. It was an instruction. The warehouse district, building 47. Come alone or come together, but be there. What if we don't? I smiled into the phone. Then you'll read about yourselves in the newspaper instead of hearing it from me first. Your choice. Building 47 was a relic from the city's industrial past, a brick warehouse that had been abandoned for years. Perfect for a private conversation without nosy neighbors or security cameras. I arrived early, setting up my phone to live stream to a private channel I'd created with links ready to send to the agency's board of directors, the Hendersons' attorney, and that gossip blogger. Maya arrived first, looking nervous and defiant in equal measure. She'd dressed carefully, designer jeans, expensive blouse, the armor of someone trying to maintain control. This is ridiculous, Jack. What are we, teenagers? Meeting in some abandoned building like we're in a bad movie? We're adults having an adult conversation about adult consequences, I replied. Something we should have done months ago. Jared showed up 10 minutes later, clearly reluctant. His BMW still reeked. I could smell the fish sauce from 20 feet away. Simone was with him, her usual confidence replaced by obvious anxiety. Okay, we're all here, Simone said, trying to take charge. What do you want, Jack? I pulled out my phone and started the live stream. I want the truth, all of it, starting with the Henderson fraud. Maya's eyes widened. You're recording this? I'm documenting this, for posterity. I held up the folder of medical records. Dr. Wells was very helpful. Turns out half of Maya's medical documentation was forged. The insurance claims, the test results, even some of the initial clearances. Simone went pale. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I opened the folder and started reading. Forged letterhead, fake signatures, claims for procedures that never happened. The medical board is very interested in this kind of thing. That's not, Maya started. Let me finish. I pulled out printed emails. Then there's the electronic trail. Emails between you and Simone discussing how to maximize the payout from the Hendersons. Text messages about finding a reliable forger. Bank records showing payments to someone named Eddie Torino, who I'm told specializes in fake documents. Jared tried to edge toward the door. This doesn't have anything to do with me. Doesn't it? I turned the phone toward him. You're the one who introduced Maya to Eddie. Your family connections, remember? Your cousin who works in medical records? You can't prove that. I smiled. Actually, I can. Eddie was very talkative when I explained that he could either cooperate with me or explain himself to the medical board and the district attorney. The silence stretched out, broken only by the sound of traffic in the distance. What do you want? Maya asked finally. I want you to admit what you did. All of it. The fraud, the affair, the plan to blame me if you got caught. And if we don't? I held up my phone. Then this live stream goes public. The agency board gets a link. The Hendersons' attorney gets a copy. The local news gets an anonymous tip. Your choice. Simone cracked first. This is insane, Maya. We should have never listened to you. Listened to me? Maya spun around. This was your idea. You're the one who said we could make easy money off the Hendersons. I never said to forge medical records. You introduced me to Eddie. Because you begged me to. I watched them turn on each other, years of friendship dissolving into mutual blame and recrimination. Jared stood frozen, probably calculating how much of this would stick to him. For the record, I said, still filming, Simone introduced Maya to a document forger named Eddie Torino. Maya commissioned fake medical records to inflate her insurance claims and justify demanding money from the Hendersons after they backed out of the surrogacy agreement. And Jared provided family connections to make the forgeries look legitimate. Stop it, Maya pleaded. Please, Jack. I know I hurt you, but this will destroy everything. Everything was already destroyed. I'm just making sure everyone else knows it too. I turned the camera on myself. My name is Jack Morrison. 6 months ago, I thought I had a marriage worth saving. Tonight, I learned I had a fraud worth exposing. I ended the live stream and immediately sent the links to my prepared list. The agency board, the Hendersons' attorney, the gossip blogger, and for good measure, Tom and Steve, my former friends who'd been so concerned about my behavior. It's done, I said simply. Maya sank against a concrete pillar, tears streaming down her face. You've ruined us. All of us. No, Maya. You ruined yourselves. I just made sure there were consequences. Simone was on her phone, probably calling a lawyer. Jared was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You're insane, he said. You know that, right? This is crazy, obsessive behavior. I walked over to him, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. You want to know what's crazy? Thinking you could screw another man's wife and not face any consequences? Thinking you could help commit fraud and walk away clean? I reached out and straightened his collar, the gesture somehow more threatening than a raised fist. Next time you think about sleeping with a married woman, remember this moment. Remember my face. Remember what happens when the boring husband stops being boring. Jared backed away, bumping into Simone. We're leaving. This is over. Yes, it is, I agreed, but not the way you thought it would be. They fled toward the exit, Simone still on her phone, Jared practically running. Maya remained, staring at me with a mixture of hatred and something that might have been respect. I never knew you had it in you, she said quietly. Neither did I. Turns out I'm full of surprises. What happens now? I shrugged. Now you deal with the consequences of your choices. The agency will probably fire you. The medical board will investigate. The Hendersons will sue. And everyone in this city will know exactly what kind of person you really are. And you? What do you get out of this? I thought about that for a moment. Peace. Finally. Maya walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. She left without another word, her footsteps echoing in the empty warehouse. I stood alone in the silence, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone was already buzzing with notifications, responses to the live stream, messages from the gossip blogger, probably angry texts from Tom and Steve. I didn't check any of them. Instead, I walked outside into the cool night air and got in my car. Tomorrow, the real fallout would begin. Maya would face professional and legal consequences. Simone would probably lose her job. Jared would have to explain to his family how he'd gotten involved in document fraud. And me? I'd be the villain in their story, the obsessive husband who destroyed their lives out of spite and jealousy. They weren't wrong. I had destroyed their lives. But not out of spite, out of justice. Not from jealousy, from principle. I drove through the quiet streets of my decaying city, past the dive bars and boxing gyms, past the trendy lofts and colonial houses, past all the places where people were sleeping peacefully, unaware that their morning news would include a scandal involving fraud, adultery, and revenge. At a red light, I finally checked my phone. 47 messages, 12 missed calls, and one email from the gossip blogger with the subject line, "This is incredible. Can we meet?" I deleted them all without reading them. The light turned green, and I drove home to my empty house, where I would sleep better than I had in months. Tomorrow, I'd wake up as the villain of someone else's story, but the hero of my own, and that was exactly how I wanted it.